Hey everyone, so today I wanted to take some time to talk about the leaked upcoming ship, the RSI Perseus. Just as a disclaimer before we start though, I don't have any more information on this ship than what's already out there, but I just wanted to make a video on it because some things have changed about it since the last time I took a look at it, and I'm personally really excited for this ship. So the last time we talked about the Perseus, it was still being called the Odin, and the general consensus was that it was a corvette designed for broadsides, and was going to be a bit smaller in size than the Polaris is supposed to be. Now this was definitely interesting and unique, but I wasn't all that interested in the ship because I didn't feel like a ship designed for broadsiding would be very flexible, so it would really have to work in a fleet if it were going to be allowed to do that. Broadsiding other ships just seemed like a very limited way to be able to engage targets, and it didn't seem all that practical to me. Another thing that might be a small detail for some, but that was very important for me, was the location of the bridge. It used to be at the front of the ship, just like the Polaris, which I'm not a fan of either. Now though, we've gotten some new information through leaked concept photos and some game files that people got a hold of, and a lot of this has changed. If you want to see those changes, I'd go check out the SC Leaks video that I have linked below, because they were able to get their hands on the model and show it off, so thanks to them for sharing this with all of us. So I think the biggest change off the bat is that massive turret that you see on top of the ship, and I think this will be the main focus of this ship. All of the corvettes seem to have one feature that they focus on, and for this one it's definitely that large main gun. I think this makes a lot more sense than having side-mounted weapons, and will allow you to get on target a lot more easily, even though it still is a massive gun that'll probably take a good amount of time to aim. Also, there's another large turret, but not quite as big as the main one on the bottom of the ship. And for overall size of the ship, this is still something that's pretty uncertain, but it seems like it's leaning towards even bigger than it was when we talked about it last time, which I think is good as long as it still retains corvette-like maneuverability. I actually really like this design change because I think that with the big weapons mounted in a way that makes sense, this corvette will be able to do big damage to large targets with those big guns, but without the limitation of having to broadside targets, which I think was kind of silly and unnecessary and would have put the ship in harm's way when it was trying to go for those attack runs. So the other thing that's still kind of uncertain with this ship is the purpose of the flap-looking assemblies on either side of it. As was discussed in the SC Leaks video, these are likely just a combination of landing gear and loading ramps for getting stuff on and off the ship, but I'm still holding out a bit of hope for them being some sort of snub bay. I don't think they'll hold any sort of quantum capable ship because that would tread on the toes of the Polaris with its hangar, but I think there's a few reasons why it could make sense for this to have a complement of snub fighters that it brings along with it. First of all, like I talked about in my last video on this ship, it is an RSI ship, and they already have the much smaller Constellation, which has its own snub, so it could make sense for them to implement some sort of exterior docking snub bays in their larger ships as well, since it's from the same manufacturer. Also, besides the two large main turret, the ship only seems to have 2-point defense turrets, one at the rear and one on top of the bridge. So in terms of defenses for dealing with fighters, that's really not a lot, because you're not going to be hitting any fighters with the main batteries. There's no way you're going to get those on target to a fast-moving small fighter. This could be an intentional balance thing to encourage the ship to work with other ships to defend it from fighters, but having snubcraft on board would really benefit this ship, and I really would like to see that, as unlikely as it is to happen. So the last big change to talk about is the new placement of the bridge on top of the ship. And as impractical and dangerous as the design might be in some cases, that's where I want my bridge to be on any sort of large ship. It just feels right, and it's going to be awesome to be able to stand up there and look over those massive guns. Personally, I like having the bridge overlooking the ship like this so much that I'd be willing to trade the hangar of the Polaris just to have this ship, because I really don't like having the bridge at the front of the ship. Maybe I just like Star Wars too much though, and just want my own Star Destroyer. Let me know you guys' thoughts on this in the comments though. But yeah, this new bridge combined with the turrets actually being in a spot that makes sense now has me really excited for this ship. So for the last part of the video, I just want to kind of go over the rest of the Corvette-ish class ships, and then give my reasoning to why I think that the Perseus is going to be my favorite out of all of them. So the first is the Hammerhead, which is on the edge of being a Corvette since it's only about 100 meters, and this is the anti-fighter Corvette. If you have it fully manned, it's very good at the job, since its 6 turrets all have pretty good firing arcs, and each one has the same firepower as a Constellation. However, that is a lot of people to commit to one ship because you'd have 1 for the pilot and then 6 for all the turrets, and its interior layout is very strange. It's also missing a lot of features like any sort of medical facilities and having a separate engineering area because all the components are just in the cargo loading room. And I'm not a fan of the bridge being on the bottom of the ship because it makes it hard to keep targets and the firing arcs of your turret gunners in my experience. It's also a bit overpriced in my opinion, but part of this is just because it's actually flyable in game, and ships usually get a price bump when they come out. So not a bad ship for what it's meant to do, but it works better with a fleet since it's meant for taking out ships that are smaller than it. And I personally want something a bit more self-sufficient. Another ship that kind of can be considered a corvette, even though it's technically a large ship, is the Carrack. So the Anvil Carrack is a very popular ship, and for good reason. Even though the exploration gameplay it's designed for is not in the game yet, it has so many capabilities that it's still a great ship even now. It has a hangar, space in the front for ground vehicles, a ton of cargo space that'll eventually be modular, it's very durable, and will have even more features in the future as they become functional, like a scanning room, weapons repair area, and drone bay. Also, it's got plenty of space for crew and a really well thought out layout. The only reason I'm not a huge fan of this ship is because I just want something a bit more combat focused, since that's what I want my corvette to do. For a lot of people though, the Carrack is a perfect ship because it can do so many things, and is great with crewmates but is still manageable solo. Okay, so these next few ships are still in various states of production or concept, so their details are a bit less nailed down than the Hammerhead, but based on the role that they're supposed to fill, you can make some comparisons between them. So one of these ships is also from RSI, the RSI Polaris. The Polaris is a corvette that's focused on torpedoes, so it also takes on ships bigger than itself, but it utilizes torpedoes to do this instead of guns like the Perseus will do. Some of the other standout features of the ship will be its pretty sizable hangar, which can fit most fighters, its med bay, and reasonable living accommodations and cargo capacity. This ship is popular because of those features, which make it somewhat functional as a mobile base, even though it's pretty combat focused. Before these recent alleged changes to the Perseus, this was my favorite, mainly because of that hangar, but I was still never a fan of having to rely on a limited supply of torpedoes for the main offensive capability of this ship, and also I'm not a fan of that front-mounted bridge. However, this will still be a great ship whenever it eventually comes out, it's just not for me. Next, we move on to the Aegis Nautilus. So we have even less details on this ship, especially because it revolves around mine gameplay, which is really not a thing at all yet. This ship does have some pretty large weapons on it as well though, and being able to create minefields and sweep existing ones will probably be a very useful feature to have someday in the verse when persistence is a thing and different groups can fight to take control of areas. However, from what we've seen, the ship is pretty laser focused on this mine gameplay, so you really have to want to do that if you want this ship. Even though this ship will definitely have a place, I'm not looking to do only mine gameplay, so this isn't the one for me. The last ship I'm going to throw into this comparison is another very popular ship, the Merchantman. So I believe the Merchantman has gone back in for reconcepting again, so who knows what it'll end up being, but it's supposed to be a hybrid of a floating marketplace and a blockade running cargo hauler. Depending on what aspects of those capabilities they focus on as they work on the ship, this could end up being my favorite, since you could potentially have that Corvette level of firepower, but earn enough to offset the running costs of a Corvette-sized ship. But again, this ship is pretty far off, so we'll have to wait and see about that. So anyway, hopefully we'll have a lot more concrete information about the Perseus on the 28th for RSI's Day at the Expo, but I still want to hear from you guys in the comments. Do you think that the side flaps on the ship are hiding something special, or do you think it's just landing gear or a non-functional design element? Also, are you excited for this ship in general? I think it is a little much to push another concept out when they have so many other large ships that they haven't finished yet either. So I definitely can understand if people are frustrated about this ship being announced, but I'm personally just excited for its feature set. Whatever the case is, I can't wait for the 28th. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.